Good evening. Is that better? Is that better? Please turn to Jeremiah 50:51, chapter 50 and 51. You have to keep in mind in this time period, the Babylonian Empire was the most powerful force in all the world, except for who? God. They were the strongest nation in the known world and had conquered most of the known world. They controlled everything. And it was not a democracy or the type of republic we have. You did what they said, or you died. Wasn't any protest, wasn't any burning flags out in the street. They just annihilate you. They did not put up with political rebellion. And protest, like we have in our republic, was considered evil. To even think that such a nation could fall was unthinkable. They controlled the known world. How could they fall? So that was not even in the minds of people. Now, what they would do in ancient times, when Babylon would want to conquer a country, they didn't do it like we do today. They would just go into that country, destroy most of it, sometimes all of it, and the people they wanted that they thought could benefit their nation, they would carry them back to Babylon. And they would remain there until they died. So Judah, God's people, because of their sins, God allowed them to be carried into captivity. They are in captivity. Now, the northern kingdom had been carried away by the Assyrians, but the southern kingdom of Judah was carried away by Babylon. And to even think that one day there would not be Babylon, that was unthinkable. But what we must keep in our mind, there is a true God. He's not just a little religious figure. He is all powerful. And when He decides this nation will fall, that's it. We must keep in mind the fall of evil. Now, when you look at the world today, Look at the way it is all over the world, not just here. It's better here than most places, if you can believe that. But it is. We must realize that it often looks like, to us, evil is winning the battle. I mean, look at what's happening in the world today. And it often looks like, from a human perspective, that evil is going to win. But what God's people must always keep in mind, evil will be defeated. Ultimately. In 1 John 4 and verse 4, John is looking at the church and the world. And notice what he says about these two entities. He said to the church, you will overcome them, the world, because greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. Since God is greater than Satan, the ultimate defeat of evil will come. Now in Revelation 20 and verse 10, a lot of different interpretations on this verse, even in the church. It looks clear to me from this passage that one day Satan and all those who work for him, his henchmen, they are going to be thrown into a lake of fire that will burn forever and ever. They'll be tormented forever. So evil will have its destruction. Now, Babylon was one of the most cruel, murderous, no compassion countries on earth. Everybody feared them. God's own people feared them. If they would have just been faithful to God, they wouldn't have had to fear them. But they weren't faithful to God, and they knew it. When people are not faithful to God, they make all these excuses. Well, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. But most of the time, deep down inside of them, they know. They know that they're not faithful. So if God's people had just been faithful, they need not to have feared Babylon, but they did. And they should have, because they weren't faithful. In Romans 8:31, Paul said, if God be for us, who can be against us? We must be sure we're on the right side. I learned early in life, sometimes to be on the side of the Lord. You couldn't be on the side of your own family. That's hard. That's a hard lesson to learn. I had to learn it early in life. But it's the truth. We must stand with God no matter what anybody else does or says to us. We must stand with God. And if we don't, then when evil is defeated, we will be defeated too, for eternity. These are the losers of all time. Oh, he was talking about, he's a loser, he's a loser. Those are the losers. And they're going to lose for eternity. So I must be faithful to God no matter what anyone else says or does, unless I want to be here. So first of all, be sure you're on the right side. And then second of all, be sure you're faithful to it above everyone else. So God had used Babylon to punish his own people. But that didn't mean Babylon was not accountable to God. Romans 14:12, we will all give an account to God. And in chapter 46 and following, we have all these Gentile nations who have to give an account for the horrible, horrible things they've done. They did things to people, some idiots would, but I wouldn't even say it in public. The things they did to people was horrible. Okay, they're going to have to pay for that. They don't care about their fellow man. They're not interested in other people. They are interested in Babylon. And they created one of the greatest empires that's ever been on the earth. Where is it now? I was reading from an archaeologist the other day about Babylon, and he was saying all this stuff where they think it might have been. They don't even know absolutely for sure. It's dirt. Animals inhabited this once great metropolis city that ruled the world. Where is it now? Think of the Roman Empire. They cleaned up the sea. Wasn't even safe to have sea travel. Really wasn't safe to travel anywhere. They cleaned up the highways. I mean, they brought law and order to the world. Now, they did it in a pretty hard way, but they brought law and order to the world. Much of the principles of our republic come from Rome. But the vastness of Rome is gone. They were cruel. They were heartless. They were not permitted to stand as the empire they once were. Now, you can still go over there and look at stuff. Look at the ruins of what was once a great empire. But you can't even do that to Babylon. We don't even know exactly for sure where it was. We know it was in the northern country, but it was destroyed. It fell. All right, if you notice in your Bible, in Jeremiah 50 and 51, we have 2 chapters devoted to this incident. And keep in mind, 1 John 5:19, the whole world lies in wickedness. Now here John uses the word world. He's one of the simplest writers of the New Testament, and yet he uses such complex ideas. One definition of the world is a worldwide kingdom dominated by Satan. Ephesians 2:2, the prince of the power of the air. He said, before these people were Christians, you walked according to the course of this world. Now, it's not Babylon we fight. It's this worldwide empire. And ever since Acts chapter 2, when the church began, this worldwide empire, its mission has been to destroy us. I remember when I was a little boy and we used to watch TV, they would come on and the Soviet Union would say things like, we're going to get your grandchildren. We're going to get your children. We're going to destroy your families. We are going to destroy your political apparatus. We're going to destroy it. You know, and I was sitting there one day watching it with my dad, and I just laughed and I said, Khrushchev thinks he's going to destroy America. He said, you better listen, boy. And you look at the things, the way things are today, the attacks on the American family, the way the family has deteriorated. You look at the way our government has deteriorated, whatever brand you happen to be. It's gone downhill. And Khrushchev was a nut. I remember him getting his shoe and banging it on the pulpit and saying, I'm going to destroy America. A lot of the things he said, he represented the evil of the world, have come to pass and are coming to pass before our eyes. Well, in chapter 50 and 51, God says to Babylon, it's over. Your place in the world is gone. They were number one in trade. They were number one in everything. And God says, no more. And so we have the destruction of this great world power. Now, when you look at chapter 50 and 51, you need to understand there are two basic views of this chapter in religion. The first view is that Babylon has never been destroyed. We don't know where it is. But that's in the future. They say Jeremiah 50 and 51 hasn't been fulfilled yet. It's all going to come to pass later. And guess when it's going to come to pass? They believe Jesus is coming back to this earth. Started in 1947, 48, when the Jews came back to Palestine. And been a little bit of trouble ever since, up to right now. And they say that's when it started. God was gathering them together from all the nations. And Jesus is going to come back and rule the world from the literal throne of David for 1,000 years. It's going to be peace and prosperity, except for those who don't submit. And that's called the millennial reign. Millennial means 1,000. He's going to reign for 1,000 years. But at the same time, Babylon is going to be rebuilt. Since we don't know where it is now, it's going to be rebuilt. And all the nations of the world who hate Christ, which is about most of them, they are going to form a confederation with Babylon. And what's going to happen? Then chapter 50 and 51 is going to be fulfilled. God is going to destroy Babylon once and for all. Now that's the millennial view. There's just one thing wrong with this view. Everything. The second view, which I believe is the biblical view, is that Jeremiah is saying Babylon is going to be destroyed in ancient times, never to be rebuilt again. Now you imagine if you were a Babylonian and you happened to read Jeremiah 50 and 51, you'd laugh. He thinks Babylon's going to fall? It'd be a joke to them, but it was no joke. Jeremiah said, it's coming. And I believe there are many indications in these two chapters that indicate that happened in ancient times. It is not going to happen in the future. All right, let's look at chapter 50. Jeremiah chapter 50. All right, in verse 1 through 10. The fall of Babylon is going to be the deliverance for God's people. You remember Colossians 1:13, Paul says we have been delivered, Christians, from the kingdom of darkness and then been translated into are transferred into the kingdom of his dear Son? Okay, these people in Babylon, God's people, the fall of Babylon, that's their deliverance. As long as they are in Babylon, they are slaves. Look at verse 1. The word that the Lord spoke against Babylon. And against the land of the Chaldeans by Jeremiah the prophet. God spoke it. 2 Peter 1, 20 and 21. He spoke it through one of his spokesmen, one of his prophets, Jeremiah. And it's against Babylon. Verse 1. Now, what's he going to tell us? All right, verse 2. I forgot my glasses. Huh? Been a long day. Oh, yeah. All right, verse 2. Look at the last part of the verse. What kind of religion did Babylon possess? Idols. They were idolatrous. Her idols are confounded. Her images are broken in pieces. Now that doesn't mean a lot to us, but in those days when one country defeated another country, then they believe, well, that God is greater than the God of the country that was defeated. He's telling them, your idols, they're not going to save you. They're not going to help you. Verse 3, out of the north there comes up a nation against her which shall make her land desolate. All right, how desolate will it be? None shall dwell therein. Now, imagine if somebody got up in the middle of Dallas, Texas, and said, in a month, nobody's going to be living here. Imagine how that'd be laughed at. This is the greatest country in the world. And this guy says, nobody's going to be living here. That's how bad it's going to be. They shall remove, they shall depart, both man and beast. Verse 6. My people have been lost sheep. Why were they lost sheep? God was their shepherd all through the Bible. Psalm 23:1, the Lord is my shepherd. They had the Lord to lead them. Why were they lost sheep? Why? One word. Unfaithful. They didn't keep his covenant. They didn't try. They didn't care. So they're lost sheep. My people have been lost sheep. Their shepherds, they have caused them to go astray. Often the leaders of God's people were called shepherds. And of course, God was the great shepherd. Now, what have these leaders done? They have turned them away on the mountains. They have gone from the mountains to the hill. They have forgotten their resting place. They have forgotten that God is their refuge, not their money, not their treasures. They say that in Babylon all kind of things would be shipped in, all kind of wild animals, monkeys and baboons, and all kind of stuff would be shipped over there. And they thought, who's going to stop this? Who is going to stop this? What's the answer? God. Verse 11. Because you were glad, because you rejoiced, O you destroyers of my heritage. When somebody has a bad time and you don't like them, do you get a good feeling about it? Well, they deserved it. They didn't have enough sense to get better. That's the kind of attitude he's talking about here. These people are in distress, and Babylon is happy over it. Never be happy over another misfortune, even if it's your enemy. Now, what happened the other day when they shot Donald Trump? Whether you like him or not, that's your business. That was terrible. And when the commentator got up and said, I wish they had killed him, somebody should have just walked right up on air and say, you're fired. You will not be here ever again. But they didn't. They let it go. Rejoicing in another's misfortune, and to be shot, that's a pretty good misfortune. You have grown fat as the heifer at grass, and bellow as bulls. They're like a bunch of big old fat cows out there stealing from the whole world, bringing destruction and grief and heartache to the whole world, leaving cities devastated. I thought it was funny, but it's not going to be funny. Why is this going to happen? It's what we talked about a few Wednesday nights ago. God is love. He is also severe. All of this is going to happen to this great nation because of God's wrath. Has God lost His wrath? When little children in America are taught unspeakable things that I'm not going to talk about in public, you know what it is, and you know how ridiculous and how terrible it is when little children are taught little things like that. Do you think God just turns His head? You think God doesn't see that? Do you think God does not see what is happening in our nation? And that He's, oh, well, They're doing the best they can. So he says all of this is going to happen because of the wrath of the Lord. Verse 14, why is this going to happen? For she has sinned against the Lord. When we sin against the Lord, we bring His wrath. 17. Israel is a scattered sheep. They're not unified anymore. Lions have driven him away. First, the king of Assyria has devoured him. Remember, he took the northern kingdom. And last, this Nebuchadnezzar, this king of Babylon, has broken his bones. Therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will punish the king of Babylon and his land as I have punished the king of Assyria. Do you think when Putin shoots missiles into a children's hospital and kills an untold number of children, do you think God just turns his head? Well, that's the best he knows. Mr. Putin's going to give an account just like I am. We're all going to give an account. And these kind of atrocities that we even see happening today are going to be taken care of. God is going to take care of it. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, verse 18, I will punish the king of Babylon and his land. Verse 19, I will bring Israel again to his habitation. There's his promise. I'm going to bring my people back home. And from that bringing home, who's going to come into the world? Jesus, right? Verse 20, I will pardon them whom I reserve. God knows who was faithful. God knows who's faithful now. Verse 23, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? Has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? Isn't that a neat name to have? The hammer of the earth. Nebuchadnezzar was the hammer of the earth. I bet he didn't think it's such a neat name now. 29. Call together the archers against Babylon, all ye that bend the bow. Camp against it round about, let none escape. Recompense her according to her work, according to all that she has done. Do unto her, for she has been proud against the Lord, against the Holy One of Israel. Behold, I am against thee, O most proud. Verse 31. They were filled with pride and arrogance. Then he talks about his children. In verse 34, their Redeemer is strong. The Lord of hosts is his name. He shall thoroughly plead their cause, that he may give rest to the land and disquiet the inhabitants of Babylon. He's going to bring God's children home and give them peace. 38, a drought is upon her waters, they shall be dried up, for it is the land of graven images, and they are mad upon their idols. He mentions to us in chapter 51 that it's the Medes that are coming and other kings. That indicates to me this is historical. This is not talking about something thousands and thousands of years is going to happen as the millennialists try to believe. But this is going to happen in ancient times. Chapter 50 and 51 are going to be fulfilled. Not in the millennium. All right, we'll take up there next time. Thank you.